I, Douglas Ducote, an American patriot by the grace of God, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies foreign and especially domestic. I, Douglas Ducote, an American patriot by the grace of God, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies foreign and especially domestic. Say it with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hello, American Patriots, and welcome to another episode of the Douglas Ducote Show. You had many places you could be tonight, but you chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. Before we dive into tonight's show, I would like to ask that all of you that believe in the power of prayer to please join me in praying for one of our moderators, and he's also a military brother of mine, Mr. John Arthur Lawrence, and his partner. John's partner is hospitalized tonight after suffering a stroke. So let us pray and wish him a speedy recovery. So please add him and his partner to your prayer list. Be greatly appreciated. Tonight's leading story. You guys are going to love this. What does it say about a Democrat president when CNN turns against you? That's right. Never in my wildest imaginations would I believe that CNN would turn on Joe Biden. But just like everybody else that's waking the hell up, they have. I'm going to read to you directly from something that was on CNN's website today. When President Joe Biden passionately said in a voting rights speech last week that he had been arrested in the context of a civil rights movement, even suggested this had happened more than once. It was a classic Biden false claim. An anecdote about his past from which there is no evidence, prompted by a decision to ad-lib rather than stick to a prepared text, resulted in easily avoidable questions about his honesty. Biden's imaginary or embellished stories about his own history were the most memorable falsehoods of his first year in office. They were not, however, the only ones. The president also made multiple false claims about important policy matters, notably including three subjects that occupy much of his time: the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, the economy, and the COVID-19 pandemic. And Biden was incorrect on numerous occasions when ad-libbing about a wide assortment of facts and figures, sometimes in a way that appeared inadvertent, but other times in a way that helped him make a political point, unlike his uniquely, and this is CNN saying this, dishonest predecessor. Talking about Trump. Biden did not bury fact checkers in a daily avalanche of serial falseness. Biden never came close to making a dozen false claims in a single speech, let alone 6 claims in one address. In fact, the total number of Biden false claims so far in this dozens, while according to CNN, Trump delivered well over 1,000 total false claims in his own first year, and according to CNN, more than 3,000 the following year. So Biden is no Trump, CNN said. With that said, dozens of false claims from the President of the United States is not nothing. And considering that Biden added dozens more claims that were misleading or lacking in important context, he provided more than enough material to keep fact checkers on their toes. Here's a roundup of Biden's first year in office. The White House declined to comment on this article when CNN asked them to. It has previously commented for individual fact checkers on some of the false claims we're discussing again below. Again, let me remind you, this is all on CNN's website right now. False claim about his own past. Hold on a second, I just spilt water all over my iPhone. That's why I need a wife. I wish she was here to be able to take care of the stupid things I do, like spill water. Oh, she is. False claims about his own past. Biden made a series of claims about his own past that were just not true. It was these easy to understand, hard to defend personal falsehoods, more than his false claims about complex policy issues or obscure statistics, which supporters could more easily dismiss as good faith errors, that provided the best ammunition for opponents looking to portray him as deceptive. And like some of Trump's tall tales from his past, Biden's tend to be peripheral to his message. In other words, he was hurting his reputation for little, if no, possible gain. While talking in November to technical college students standing near a truck, Biden claimed he used to drive a tractor trailer, though only for part of the summer. This was similar to something he had said at a Mack truck facility back in July, when he claimed, "I used to drive in an 18-wheeler, man," adding, "I got to." There is no evidence Biden ever drove any kind of big truck or an 18-wheeler, CNN said. The White House previously noted to CNN that he once had a job driving a school bus, which of course is not an 18-wheeler or a tractor trailer, and that as a senator in 1973, he actually spent a night riding in a cargo truck, but not driving it. Biden repeatedly told a story about supposed conversation during his vice presidency with an old friend, an Amtrak train conductor, that could not possibly have happened because the man was dead at the time. He repeatedly boasted that he traveled 17,000 miles with Chinese President Xi Jinping, though that number is not even close to being correct. Biden distracted from his voting rights message with the baseless claim just last week, which he had made before, about having been arrested during a civil rights protest. In some of the previous versions of the story, he had merely claimed a police officer had taken him home from a protest. There is evidence Biden participated in some civil rights activities in his youth, but no record has ever been found that Joe Biden was ever arrested. And Biden told two different inaccurate stories while trying to emphasize his connection to the Jewish community. At a September event in honor of the High Holy Days, Biden told Jewish leaders that he remembered spending time at and going to Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue, the site of the massacre back in 2018. He had spoken by phone to the synagogue's rabbi in 2019, but he's never been there. At a Hanukkah event in December, Biden claimed that late Israel Prime Minister Golda Meir had invited him to meet with her during the Six-Day War in 1967. He actually met with her weeks before the Yom Kippur War, 6 years later. And more significantly, that she had wanted him to be the liaison between she and the Egyptians about the Suez, and so on and so forth. There is zero evidence that that meeting ever took place. Wanted to use a 30-year-old rookie U.S. senator as a liaison with a major anniversary. False claims about Afghanistan. Biden was beveiled about the summer of his chaotic withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan, and he made a variety of false claims that he tried to defend his handling of the situation, further undermining his authority on the issue on which he has already struggled to persuade the public and our military and our veterans, and I'm sure you too. In August, the president said, "What interest do we have in Afghanistan at this point with Al-Qaeda gone?" Al-Qaeda had been degraded in Afghanistan, but it sure as hell wasn't gone. As a Pentagon spokesman acknowledged on camera the same day, because reporters were wanting to ask the Pentagon, y'all defeated Al-Qaeda? In an interview that week, Biden defended the U.S. withdrawal in part by claiming that the concept of nation building in Afghanistan never made any sense to me, though in fact, he had explicitly advocated nation building in the earlier years of the war, both in Afghanistan and more broadly. In July, when Biden was under pressure to quickly relocate Afghans who had assisted U.S. troops, he said, "The law doesn't allow Afghan translators to come to the U.S. to wait the processing of their visa applications." But experts in immigration law immediately said, this isn't true. Given the administration's authority to grant parole, and indeed, the Biden administration ended up using parole later in the summer to do what Biden had claimed wasn't even permitted. In December, Biden said in another interview that I've been against that war in Afghanistan from the very beginning. While he eventually grew opposed to the war, he was not against it from the start. As fact checkers pointed out with CNN when he made similar remarks during his presidential campaign. False claims about the economy. The state of the economy was a key part of the speech, a battleground between Biden and his critics. He argued it was thriving. They argued it's failing. And although both sides often cite valid data points, the president also made some false claims to bluster his case. Biden occasionally overstated progress and understated problems. Asked at a CNN town hall in July about inflation and automobile prices, he claimed that the cost of a car was kind of back to what it was before the pandemic. The cost had actually increased substantially since late 2019 and early 2020. I can testify for that because I've purchased several brand new cars over the past 2 years due to hurricanes and floods. In an economic speech in November, he greatly exaggerated the extent of the decline in the unemployment rating during his tenure. To try to sell his economy politics, Biden sometimes made inaccurate statements about what experts had said about them. In many alone, he falsely claimed that there was a consensus among economists about how many jobs his American Jobs Plan would create. Significantly overstated how many jobs the firm Moody's analysts in particular predicted the plan would create, and falsely claimed that the last 5 leaders of the Federal Reserve had said the plan would produce economic growth. Wrongly described both the contents and the authorship of an article that was accurately written by 5 former Internal Revenue Service chiefs. Later in the year, Biden misleadingly framed another Moody's job estimate, and he repeatedly omitted the key phrase longer term from an assertion by Nobel-winning economist that his 1.9 trillion Build Back Better agenda would ease longer-term inflationary pressures, leaving Americans to believe that these economists might have said his agenda would reduce the inflation hurting their bank accounts today. False claims about the COVID pandemic. Many of Biden's first-year speeches were devoted to the COVID-19 pandemic. Biden was almost incomparably more accurate on the subject than Trump was, according to CNN, tending to factually convey the severity of the situation rather than matching his predecessor's rhetoric about bad numbers. Were not actually bad numbers and how the virus would just disappear, but Biden made a smattering of false claims on this topic as well. At a CNN town hall in July, Biden made the inaccurate categorical promise that you're not going to get COVID if you're vaccinated. Let me repeat that. At the CNN town hall in July, Biden said, you're not going to get COVID if you're vaccinated. It was clear even before the emergence of the Omicron variant that vaccinated people are still getting infected with the virus. Though the vaccine made them much less likely to get seriously ill, vaccinated people on the president's own staff have been infected. Biden also went too far at the town hall when he categorically pledged that if you're vaccinated, you're not going to be hospitalized, you're not going to be in the ICU unit, and you're not going to die. Pretty damn interesting because people are dying constantly of COVID-19, supposedly COVID-19, that are fully vaccinated, to include one of my personal friends, which I've shared with you in the past. The last time I was sick with COVID-19, at the same time, one of my best friends of over 40 some odd years got COVID-19. I lived, he died. Biden sometimes exaggerates on the subject of his administrative work to get Americans vaccinated, misleadingly playing down the Trump administration's own vaccine purchases, and in May, overstated how the U.S. vaccination rate compared with those of the rest of the world. And he made various errors in discussing pandemic-related facts and figures. In February, Biden claimed that suicides are up aimed at the pandemic. Experts said at the time that the claim was premature, and it turned out to be wrong, though suicide rates did increase for some demographic groups. In October, the president wrongly told Americans that there were over 800,000 vaccination sites in the country. He had added an extra zero to the correct figure, which was less than 80,000. False claims in unscripted settings. And before I get into that, let me just, for those that at YouTube that like to shut me down when I talk about COVID-19, this is from CNN. Go read it yourself. I'm just repeating what they're saying. When Biden stuck to prepared speeches vetted by his staff, he tended to be factual, though certainly wasn't perfect. When he ad-libbed or participated in unscripted exchanges with journalists and citizens, he was more likely to sparkle in inaccuracies, making false and misleading claims about everything from his handling of the situation at the southern border to Virginia political history to gun laws to the size of the tax break for people who own racehorses. During Biden's first 100 days in the Oval Office, he is repeatedly incorrect or misleading in describing the actions of the Trump administration. This is CNN saying this. And he made one particular notable misleading claim during the early period. At a heated moment on the national debate over Georgia Republicans' new election law, Biden did a television interview in which he criticized the law in part by misstating damn near everything it said. Once again, go look this up if you doubt it for a split second. That's from CNN. What does it say when a Democrat president loses CNN? People are waking the fuck up. That's what it says. Now, that being said, Fox News also put out something similar, which I'd like to share with you. President Biden was sworn into office on January 20th, 2021, where he talked about unity and major legislative goals. However, his administration has been plagued by tensions within the Democrat Party, highly controversial foreign policy decisions, and legislative failures. President Biden has faced criticism over soaring gas prices, inflation, and his politics as his approval rating is currently in damn near every poll you look at, 35% or lower. Afghanistan. The United States left Afghanistan in August of last year, leaving behind thousands of allies who worked side by side with the American military for over 20 years. Left them to be slaughtered by the same people that attacked us on 9/11. While the administration boasted it evacuated over 120,000 Afghans, a majority were not Afghan interpreters or their families, officials have admitted at the Pentagon. The Biden administration has pledged to help vulnerable Afghans escape, but many lawmakers and veterans say the government has no plans whatsoever to rescue perhaps the most critical ally, Afghan commandos, a group built from scratch by U.S. Special Operation Forces. Among the 124,000 Afghan evacuees whom the U.S. government flew out of Afghanistan back in August and brought to military bases across the U.S. before being resettled, many are struggling under a broken immigration bureaucracy, lack of government papers and documentation, and delayed Social Security numbers. Quick question, Fox News. Maybe y'all should ask, what the hell are we giving them Social Security numbers for? Guess we're going to give them driver's license too, right? Preventing them from working and feeding their families. The U.S. government only commits to providing support for the evacuees for 90 days. So we bring over 100,000 Afghans over here. Most of them can't speak a lick of English. Most of them didn't have shit to do with helping us in Afghanistan. Some of them are terrorists. Oh, we're going to get into that here shortly. And it provides $1,225 per evacuee to help with those first 90 days. They also loan them the money to fly to their final destination. That money needs to be paid back. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court handed President Biden loss after loss in a series of tense legal battles since the president took office. His most recent defeat, a COVID-19 vaccination mandate that would affect a sweeping number of employers, may be the most painful yet of the administration. The Supreme Court blocked enforcement of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, that's OSHA, vaccination mandate for businesses with 100 or more employees. The OSHA mandate was a signature COVID-19 policy Biden had been pushing for months, despite protests from conservatives. The Supreme Court voted in a 6-3 ruling to overturn Biden's eviction in August of 2021, with the court's 3 liberal-leaning justices dissenting. In the same month, the Supreme Court ruled that the Biden administration attempted to get rid of the Trump-era Remain in Mexico policy, violated federal law. Enjoy your 16 cents. The White House was panned on social media in 2020 over a tweet that mentioned the decrease in cost of home cookouts this year during the 4th of July weekend. You all remember that, right? The cost of a 4th of July cookout in 2021 is down 16 cents from last year, the tweet read, citing from Farm Bureau. The accompanying slideshow illustrates the dip in prices for some of the essential foods for most cookouts. Representative Elisa Stanflink, Republican of New York, responded to the tweet by questioning if anyone in the Biden administration has been to a gas station recently. The average price for a gallon of gas is $3.15, she posted. This is the highest price for a gallon of gas since 2014, and a 42% increase from just last year. Dan Price, the Gravity Payment CEO, also responded to the tweet. 16 cents? Home prices are going up 24% annually right now. The median home goes up 16 cents every 1.3 seconds right now. Supply chain and inflation. A rapidly deteriorating supply chain has haunted the Biden administration since the early days of office. Grocery shoppers across the country have encountered barren shelves when looking for typical groceries due to supply chain snags, increasing COVID-19 infections and related hurdles, as well as severe winter weather. Biden has previously brushed off public outrage over the supply chain issues, claiming the average American would not be able to understand such a complex situation. It's not that we're stupid, it's that he's stupid. And look, you just can't fix stupid, but you can dress it up in a suit and tie and call it a Democrat. If we're all going out and having lunch together, and I said, let's ask whoever is in the next table, no matter what restaurant you're in, have them explain the supply chain to us, do you think they'd understand what we're really talking about, Biden said? They're smart people, the president said, but he concluded the current crisis was part of a complected world. Jim Eagle, Jim Crow 2.0. Biden has made a habit of using aggressive and socially charged accusations of racism towards political opponents. Boy, has he. President Biden said Republicans' state voting legislation makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle during his first formal press conference, March of 2021. Biden, during the press conference, was asked about whether he worries that Republicans in states across the country proposing legislation to curb voting access could cost Democrats control of Congress during 2022 midterms. I'm convinced that we'll be able to stop this because it's the most princess thing. This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. Even members of Biden's own party have not been free from this finger pointing and Jim Crow rhetoric. Democrat Senator Kristen Sinema, decisions to support keeping the Senate filibuster rule, those preventing her party from passing a federal election overhaul bill. Her lack of support sparked outrage from liberals who accused her of a racist. That's right. You go against your own party in the Democrat Party, you're a racist. I used to be a Democrat, and they're all racist. Biden said Jim Crow 2.0 is about two things: voter suppression and election subversion. It's about making it harder to vote. Who gets to count the vote? And whether your vote counts at all. We have to pass the Freedom to Vote Act and John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, he continued, referring to legislation that is likely to be locked in a political stalemate in the Senate. Oh, yes, it is. While such accusations have been parroted and championed by Biden's aligned Democrats, the allegations of racism have done little to dampen opposition to the president's policies. Masking when unnecessary and no mask in crowds. Biden, along with numerous other Democrat lawmakers, were frequently spotted not wearing their mask in public areas that required them. Biden was caught ignoring mask requirements while in Detroit to visit the General Motors plant. The president shook hands while maskless in a crowded area. In October, he was criticized after footage showed him and the First Lady not following local mask mandates in D.C. at a high-end Georgetown restaurant. Biden was also spotted ignoring signs requesting customers to wear a mask while on vacation in Nantucket. It's all do as I say, not as I do. And I think you all got that. The president was spotted masked up while walking alone with his similar vaccinated and boosted wife. The president continued wearing the mask as he played along with his dog at the remote beach. Have you seen the pictures of this? They're on a beach. There's nobody there. Him and his wife. She's not wearing a mask. He's wearing a mask because there's photographers in the dunes. And of course, Secret Service are following back a good 50 yards. And he's on the beach wearing a mask for the cameras. Communication skills. One of the most frequent sources of criticism against Biden has been his repeated verbal and mental gaffes during public appearances. President Biden appeared in a South Carolina State University commencement ceremony on Friday of last week to speak to students of the historical Black University, where he commented several verbal gaffes. At different points, the president accidentally referred to Vice President Harris as President Harris. And he's done that many times. And reflecting on the George Family Justice Act, Policing Act, on police reform, I share the frustration, Biden said at one point, and I know the family well. The George Family Justice Act, Policing Act, I know the family well, Biden said, mangling the names of Democrats' George Floyd Justice and Policing Act on several occasions. Biden has stated that he is not opposed to taking questions from the press or would get in trouble with his staff for not obeying instructions back in March of 2021. The White House raised eyebrows when it suddenly cut the feed of a virtual event after Biden said he was happy to take questions from Democrat lawmakers. I'd be happy to take questions if that's what I'm supposed to do, Nancy. Biden told House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, whether you want me to or not, then the feed was shut off. And so was Biden. And it's happened more, trust me, than one time. And you all know that. You've been following this crazy, literally batshit crazy presidency, right? Now, this next story you can find all over the internet, YouTube, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, BBC, ABC, CBS, NBC. Everybody is reporting on this. So please don't strike my channel because I am. Britain is ending COVID-19 restrictions, including mask mandates, working from home, and vaccine passports. Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced yesterday. The measures have been introduced to slow the spread of the highly transmissible Omicron variant of the virus. Many nations across Europe have endured future winter lockdowns, but this government took a different path, Johnson told lawmakers, citing a decreasing number of people being admitted to intensive care because of the virus. Our scientists believe that the wave has now peaked nationally because of the extraordinary booster campaign, Johnson said, adding that restrictions also had slowed the spread. EU scientists have still disagree with the World Health and America's CDC on how to deal with this pandemic. And now they're taking a stand. Shortly after Minister Johnson's speech, Joe Biden held a press conference saying the exact opposite. Double mask mandates, vaccines, so when and where possible. He also said not only do Americans need to be vaccinated, but all humans on planet Earth should be as well. So it's very obvious that before he went out and spoke, nobody in his administration cared to mention to him that Britain just said, we're done with this crazy shit. Moving on to something that I have said many times. Those of you that follow me on a regular basis, you know that this has come out of my mouth a lot. And that is, under this current administration and the way they're treating our southern border, the way they're allowing people to not be vetted properly coming over from places like Afghanistan, that we will have another terrorist attack right here in America. I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. It will happen, sadly. Well, it did, as you probably know, in Texas. Senator Ron Johnson, Republican Wisconsin, is pushing for answers from the Biden administration on how Malik Faisal Akram, the British-born suspect in the Texas synagogue hostage standoff, was allowed to get into the country, as revelations about his criminal and radical past are now coming to light. Akram was shot dead last week after allegedly taking 4 people hostage in a synagogue in Corval, Texas, where he is reportedly to have demanded the release of a Palestinian national in prison for trying to kill U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Johnson, in a letter to the Homeland Security Secretary and FBI Director, commends the actions of law enforcement who successfully worked to ensure the safety of all hostages. He then noted recent reports that raised red flags about this guy and how he got into the United States in the first place. In the aftermath of the attacks, information about Akram's background and criminal history have come to light. Johnson, who sits on the Senate Homeland Security Committee, wrote, Akram was a British citizen whose criminal record apparently dated back several decades. While American authorities have released little information about Akram's travels, British news outlets have reported that he entered the U.S. earlier this month via John F. Kennedy Airport, possibly via the visa waiver program that's in place by the Biden administration. The FBI has declined to comment on Akram's travels, citing the ongoing investigation. The UK Telegraph reported that he had spent 3 terms in prison, had been a member of a radical Islamic group, and been banned from magistrate courts in 2001 for telling an official he wished they had been killed in the 9/11 attacks. British authorities confirmed to Fox News that he did, in fact, have a criminal record. His last brush with the law was in 2012 when he was convicted of theft and harassment. During the time he was in prison for that conviction, Akram, who had prior criminal offenses, reportedly conducted himself in an extreme manner of attending the jail's mosque. And one observer noted he was obsessed with Islam, according to Britain. Johnson in the letter also noted, reporting that British intelligence identified Akram as a subject of interest as early as 2020, but closed the investigation after it found there was no indication of a terror threat. According to reports, when Akram entered the U.S. on a tourist visa on December 29th, 2021, about 2 weeks before the attack, he was not on any U.S. watch list. How the hell is that even possible? There are Americans that have never left this country, but because they happen to have a name similar to somebody from the Middle East, they're on the terrorist watch list and can't even get off of it. Yet, given Akram's prior placement on a British intelligence watch list, it is concerning that he was able to enter the country without triggering any alarms, Johnson wrote. The Wisconsin senator asked the administration whether Akram was ever included on the terrorist screening database, whether it had any information or awareness of Akram before the January 15th attack, and information about the visa on which he arrived. Johnson also asked, to what extent has the FBI's decision to deploy its full investigative resources into the January 6th Capitol breach hindered its ability to detect and investigate a known terrorist? The letter is the latest push by Republicans to get answers on Akram by Republicans on the committee. Senator Rob Portman, the ranking member on the committee, has requested briefings from both the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. Senator John Hawley, who also sits on the committee, wrote to both the Homeland Security Secretary and the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, calling for answers and tied the attack to an alleged failure in the vetting process by this administration, also noting Akram's radical past. How is anyone with this background allowed to enter our country, he asked. And this guy didn't even go to South America or Mexico and come up like the other terrorists we're catching right now. He flew into JFK and nobody said anything. Either your department knowingly allowed entry to someone with demonstrated sympathies for terrorist organizations and committing violence, or they failed to conduct even a courtesy background check. And then we had, in the first 24 hours, the FBI saying that they see no connection, that he was against Jewish people. It just happened to be that he walked into a synagogue not knowing that there were Jewish people there. And that it was too early to determine if it was terrorism. Even Joe Biden, for once, said, let's let all the facts come out before we talk about it. He's never done that in the past, has he? Well, now tonight, the FBI has finally said that yes, this guy is a terrorist. This was a terrorist attack in America, holding hostages, and thankfully he didn't kill any of them. And that he was a bad guy, and that he actually did target Jewish people. And he went into the synagogue because there were Jewish people there. I recently talked about the NCAA and all these transgender people, men claiming to now be women and competing in women's sports and beating their ass because these men have just biologically are stronger than most women. I mean, that's just a fact. The NCAA changed its policy regarding transgender athletes, finally. It announced the new approach to allowing transgender athletes will follow a sport-by-sport model similar adopted by the U.S. and International Olympic Committees, Sports Illustrated reported. The NCAA said if there was no international federation policy, then the previously established IOC policy criteria would be followed. We are steadfast in our support of transgender student athletes and are fostering a fairness across college sports. John DeGora, Georgetown University president, and the NCAA board's chairman said in a statement on yesterday, announcing the change. The new policy is effective immediately. The Board of Governors voted to pass the new policy as it preserves opportunity for transgender student athletes while balancing fairness, inclusion, and safety for all who compete. It is important that NCAA member schools, conferences, and college athletes compete in an inclusive, fair, safe, and respectful environment and can move forward with a clear understanding of the new policy. NCAA President Mark released a statement saying the new policy brings collegiate sports closer to Olympic standards. Approximately 80% of U.S. Olympians are either current or former college athletes. This policy alignment provides consistency and further strengthens the relationship between college sports and U.S. Olympics. The NCAA's rule came into the national spotlight due to the emergence of Penn's Leah Thompson. She started breaking Ivy League records with international records in the crosshairs. She was on the men's team for her first 3 years because she was a guy born with a penis. Yeah. But then she switched to the women because she didn't compete with the men. But she could sure swim better than the women. Her success this year ignited criticism over allowing transgender women to compete against biological females. Women's sports advocates and parents at Penn have recently spoken out against the NCAA and its rules on transgender student athlete participation. The new NCAA policy means swimming athletes will be governed by USA swimming policies, which follow the International Olympic Committee. The IOC policy updated their transgender participation policy in November 2021, reframing from the focus of testosterone levels to determine eligibility, according to the Washington Post. The IOC urged the governing bodies of each individual sports to create the rules while offering assistance. Every athlete has the right to participate in sports without discrimination and in a way that respects their health, safety, and dignity. Of course, we should all agree to that. The updated rules state. At the same time, the credibility of competition sports, and particularly high-level sporting competitions, relies on a level playing field where no athlete has an unfair or disproportionate advantage over the rest. Richard Buggett, the IOC's medical and scientific director, said at the time it was important to look at broader terms rather than just testosterone levels. It's important we broaden the evidence base. There is some interesting research that needs to come to conclusion, and that will give us much more information about performance, which is the issue, which is really key to determining eligibility, Budget said. According to Swam, an NCAA spokesman, said the previously established IOC policy criteria, referring to the November 2021 guidance, the rules previously stated that trans female athletes must demonstrate a testosterone level below 10 liters for at least 12 months, 10 nmol/L, for at least 12 months. The guidance was seemingly altered following Laura Herbert's historic appearance at the Olympics. Thomas finished about 2 seconds ahead of her opponents with a time of 1:48.73 in the 200 freestyle. She missed out on setting the NCAA record held by Olympian Missy Franklin, who finished the event in 1:39.10 in 2015. Thomas wasn't the dominant as she was at the Zippy International at Akron last month. She faced a real challenger in the 100 freestyle from Yale's Isaac Hing, who is transitioning from female to male. Hing had a time of 49.57 seconds, with Thomas finishing behind him with a time of 52.84 seconds. Hing, who is from California, has been competing for Yale since 2018, stunned the limited spectators at the race. Liberals want fairness, right? I know Republicans do. I think Democrats do too. I mean, why the hell did we ever go there? To allow men that were on men's teams, but they couldn't compete, to switch over to women's teams, which, oh, by the way, will not allow men to be on, but because they call themselves transgender, allowed them to compete against women and beat them. Things that make you go, what the? Yeah. Ukrainian president on Thursday slapped back at comments made by President Biden during a news conference, during which he suggested the size of a Russian invasion could alter how the U.S. and NATO respond. And by the way, mark my words on it, that invasion is about to happen. We want to remind the great powers that there are no minor incursions and small nations. It was said by Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, in a tweet. Just as there are no minor casualties and little grief from the loss of a loved one. I say this as the president of a great power, he added. The Ukrainian president comments appear to be in direct response to Biden saying that actions by NATO following a Russian excursion depends on the size of the invasion. And yes, that's what he said. If they just send in 1,000 troops to kill Ukrainians, just a little one. They send in 20,000. We can weigh it, but they've got hundreds of thousands of troops right now ready to invade Ukraine as I speak. Hell, they may have already started by now, and I don't know about it yet because I'm doing this show. Russia will be held accountable if it invades, Biden said Wednesday evening, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor invasion, and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not to do, et cetera, he continued. But if they actually do what they're capable of doing with the forces amidst on the border, it's going to be a disaster for Russia as they further invade Ukraine. The president was then questioned by reporters if the U.S. and NATO would not respond with sanctions should Russia carry out a minor invasion. Biden did not directly clarify his meaning. Instead, the president warned that several sanctions on Russia and its Nord Stream 2 pipeline would have economic repercussions for not just the Kremlin, but for the U.S. and its European allies. Biden also said that not all NATO member nations have agreed to slap Russia with tough sanctions if it does invade the former Soviet nation. The most important thing to do, big nations can bluff, number one, the president said. And number two, the idea that we would do anything to split NATO, which would be have a profound impact on one, I think, prominent impact on one of Putin's objectives is weaken NATO, would be a big mistake. But it depends on what he does as to what extent we're going to be able to get total unity on the NATO front, he added. Now, I just read to you word for word what he said in that press conference. Does that sound like somebody that's mentally capable of being the commander-in-chief of our military and keeping us safe? The White House later clarified the position in a statement that warned the Kremlin against any invasion. If any Russian military forces move across the Ukrainian border, that's a renewed invasion, and it will be met with a swift, severe, and united response from the United States and our allies, the statement said by the White House press secretary. I'm sorry. Do you idiots realize they have more nuclear weapons than we do, and all it takes is one to give everybody a bad day? And you're going to start threatening that we're going to go do some severe damage to them in the event they go into Ukraine? The smartest thing we could have done, and look, I'm not an expert, but spent a lot of times in the damn military and did a few combat tours. Smartest thing we could have done when we saw this coming down the pipeline is start sending U.S. troops into Ukraine and start doing military exercises with them. Because they're never going to invade Ukraine if there are military forces currently on the ground there. But no, we didn't do that. But we've done it in the past in many situations similar to this one. You're going to love this. Over the furious dissent of 3 liberal justices, the Supreme Court today rejected another attempt by abortion providers to block Texas' 6-week abortion ban. The court's order is the latest setback for providers who are trying to revive challenges to the law 5 months after it was allowed to go into effect, bringing a halt to most abortions in the country's second largest state. 3 liberal justices wrote a scathing dissent. This case is a disaster for the rule of law and a grave disservice to women in Texas who have a right to control their own bodies, Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote, joining by Justices Stephen Breyer and Elaine Kagan. I will not stand by silently as the state continues to nullify this constitutional guarantee. Excuse me, Judge. Please tell us where in the United States Constitution it talks about abortion rights. I've read it. I would think as a lawyer, as a judge, and now sitting judge on the Supreme Court, that you would know that it's not in the Constitution. And furthermore, Your Honor, why do women have the right to control their own bodies, but yet no woman, man, or child has the same right over vaccinations. You don't have a right to get vaccinated or not. You have to get vaccinated, but it's okay to kill babies, a beating heart. This is fucking insanity. That's what this is. Last month, the Supreme Court allowed the controversial law to remain in effect, but it cleared a limited path forward for the providers to sue a handful of licensing officials in Texas in order to block them from enforcing the law. The court's ruling was a devastating blow to the supporters of abortion rights who had hoped the justices would block the law outright. Instead, the case was returned to the conservative 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. The dispute settled Thursday, centered on whether the appeals court should immediately return what is left of the provider's case to a district court judge who has expressed deep skepticism over the law, or whether the case could remain in the Fifth Circuit for proceedings that could take months to resolve, further delay the provider's case. The providers asked the justices to step in to demand the Fifth Circuit return the case to the district court. Without comment, the Supreme Court's majority denied the request. In her dissent, Sotomayor said, the majority, noting that the law has devastating access to abortion care in Texas, even though it violates nearly 50 years of the court's precedents. Judge, murder is murder. And your warped interpretation of the laws is outright sick. Instead of stopping at Fifth Circuit panel for indulging Texas' newest delay tactics, the court allowed the state yet again to extend the deprivation of federal constitutional rights of its citizens through procedural manipulation, Sotomayor said. Again, Your Honor, where in the United States Constitution are you getting this? Maybe South Park did an episode on abortion and you watched it with a grandkid or something and you're spewing no merit BS from that? I mean, I don't know. But I assure you, it's not in the Constitution. Liberal justices also outlined the unusual nature of the novel law that creates say was written with the express intent to make it difficult to challenge in federal court. That's because the Texas Attorney General is barred from enforcing the law. Instead, anyone from anywhere in the country can file suit against an individual who they believe helped the woman obtain an abortion after 6 weeks. Because of our precedents are clear that Texas cannot directly ban abortion before liability, the state legislation enacted a law that instills terror in those who assist women exercising their right between 6 and 24 weeks, Sotomayor said. She said that after the Supreme Court issued its opinion, the case should have landed back in the district court, but instead the appeals court distorted the Supreme Court's ruling. Texas wagered that this court did not mean what little it said, she wrote. That bet was paid off. Under most circumstances, a justice will end a dissent with the words, "I respectfully dissent." But not this bitch. Nope, she just said, "I dissent." Is it okay to call a Supreme Court justice a bitch? I think in the Constitution, I can do that, ma'am. But the shit coming out of your mouth isn't there. Former Democrat Labor Secretary Robert Reich became the latest figure on the left to viciously attack Senator Kristen Sinema, Democrat, Arizona, over her filibuster stance. suggesting Senate Democrats should assault her for it. Oh, I think that's inciting violence. Maybe I'm wrong. Tonight, Republican senators lined up to shake Kyrsten Sinema's hand. He wrote in a now deleted tweet on Thursday, today. Democrat senators should have given her the backs of their hands. Sinema and Senator Joe Manchin joined all 50 Senate Republicans on Wednesday in opposing the attempt to alter the Senate filibuster on party lines, resulting in a 48-52 final tally. As predicted, Democrats failed to advance their expansion election overhaul bills over the 60-vote filibuster threshold. Sinema has particularly enraged liberals for her steadfast support of maintaining the filibuster, and Reach suggested that Democrats should hit a woman for her stance drew outrage. National Review's Charlie Cook said Rich's remark was temerarious of saying Sinema must be slapped around by her party if she fails to follow the demands of a white man. No big deal, tweeted radio host Larry O'Connor, just Democrat socialist icon Robert Rich, encouraging violence against a female senator who didn't vote the way he wanted. Dear FBI, please do your fucking job and go investigate this son of a bitch for inciting violence. That's what he's doing. Oh, but because he's a Democrat, y'all gonna let him get away with it? Give me a fucking break. Just last year, Reach scolded Republicans as actively opposed to end the epidemic of violence against women in America. In 2020, he shared remarks from Representative AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat in New York, after she accused a House Republican of verbally accosting her. Rich urged all men to let her message sink in about not accepting violent language against women. Rich hasn't apologized or offered any additional comment since deleting the original tweet about her. The Arizona Democrat has been the subject of a sharp and even personal attack from the left for maintaining her support for the filibuster. Representative Maxine Waters said Manchin and Sinema didn't care about blacks and minorities in an interview last week. Speaking of bitches, speaking of inciting violence, and the FBI did what? Do I hear crickets? Yeah. Rich, now a professor at the University of California, Berkeley. That's a great place for him. Served in the Clinton administration. The left-wing economist has made appearances on CNN and MSNBC over the years to comment on political and economic matters. Rich also suggested Wednesday that because of the filibuster, Republicans had the green light to cheat their way to victory in the midterms and the presidential election in 2024 and every election thereafter, because those mean Republicans want IDs to be able to vote. Prove you're an American to be able to vote. Oh, that's in the Constitution. You can't vote in America unless you're an American citizen. Period. End of story, you freaking idiots. It appears I'm going over my time. And right now, let's keep on because I'm on a roll. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said Thursday, community safety is the highest priority after a week of tragic headlines of murder around the United States. At a news conference at the Capitol Thursday, Pelosi said she's unsure the exact form legislation in the House will take, but the first responsibility for Congress is to protect and defend, whether it's national security or community safety. Community safety is of the highest priority, Pelosi said to Fox News Digital. Get the fuck out of here. Really? Have you been to the border, you crazy ass bitch? There's drugs pouring across. There's sex trafficking. There's MS-13 gang members. It's unbelievable. And now you're going to be almighty? Pelosi was responding to a question from Fox News Digital about the 30% spike in murders from 2019 to 2020 and notable recent tragedies, including a 24-year-old UCLA student, Brina Kuffler, knifed to death while at work at a furniture store in Los Angeles. A woman in New York City, Michelle Go, who was fatally shoved in front of a subway train, and an 11-month-old baby killed by a stray bullet in the Bronx on Wednesday. Pelosi said that the form of the House legislation to address safety remains to be seen, but notes the Democrats' Build Back Better legislation has some provisions. Pelosi's office said the speaker is referring to the $5 billion in the funding for the BBB legislation has for community violence incentives. $2.5 million in violence intervention incentives through the Department of Justice and $2.5 billion for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, to support public health interventions to reduce community violence and trauma. Pelosi, I would love for you to meet with the angel families in this country. Okay. They're the ones whose loved ones have been killed by illegal aliens. And you, madam, don't give two shits about them. Pelosi previously said in December that the legislation, which is currently stalled in the Senate, would deliver the largest ever federal investment in community violence intervention incentives that have proven to save lives. These measures will help us end the bloodshed and protect our children. We will not relent until they are enshrined into law. Pelosi also noted the American Rescue Plan that President Biden signed into law last year has significant funding, $350 billion, for state and local governments to help first responders like police and fire. Bullshit. Communities could also tap into those funds to address gun violence. We have to be stronger than in that respect, Pelosi said. As for the issue of criminal justice, Pelosi said the House could probably have a full day on that subject alone. Oh, yes, they could, madam. Our first responsibility is to protect and defend, whether that's our national security or community safety, Pelosi said. We have to keep the American people safe. The hell out of here, you crazy bitch. You don't give a damn about what's happening on our southern border. You don't care what they're doing to Americans. You don't care. You are a disgrace to not only the position you hold, but a disgrace to all members of Congress, a disgrace to our Constitution, a disgrace to this country. In fact, I go a step further and say you are a disgrace to the human race, Nancy Pelosi, and the rest of your cohorts, AOC and Rashid Tlaib and Anita Presley and Ilhan Omar. You care about the safety of Americans and their health. And come on, madam. You know, if you were Pinocchio, you could actually touch your home in California with your fucking nose from Washington, D.C. Anyhow, folks, you had many places. My wife's cracking up. I'm glad I can make her laugh. You had many places to be tonight, but you chose to be here. Well, what?
So wait, talk about the fact that they can track everybody with the CDC with an ID, but they don't want to do voter ID because it's racist.
Right. I know. I
There's a
agree.
problem there.
We can track everybody with the CDC and the vaccine, but not
Everybody
voters.
in the world,
Everybody in the world. You're right. You're right.
but not voter ID because it's racist.
You know, she really
That's a
wants.
problem.
She wants to be my co-host.
No, I don't.
What? What?
No, I'm a sideline girl.
Anyhow, again, as I was saying, if you haven't already done so, please go check out DouglasDucote.com, our website. You can see videos there that you can't see on YouTube because I'm not politically correct, and they shut me down from time to time. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving in the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders, their families, our angel families, our blue and gold star families, our country, and also for our brother, John Lawrence. Thank you. God bless you all. Unless something emergency breaks between now and next Tuesday, and at the rate we're going, an asteroid could be hitting this earth any moment now. Or UFOs could land on the White House lawn and take Joe Biden away. I put nothing past anything anymore because people that we used to call conspiracy theorists are now laughing their ass off because the shit's coming true. Anyhow, thank you all. God bless you. And I'll see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Time. Please subscribe, ring the bell, and share my videos. And just let people know about the Douglas Ducote Show. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. I'm out.